Good evening, everyone. Just a couple of announcements for tonight. We have our fall festival coming up this coming Saturday, the 12th, the 12th of October. And so we're looking for more people to donate baked goods for our bake sale, more trunks for trunk or treat, more candy for the kids who come for trunk or treat, and also more chili for our chili cook-off. It's going to be a wonderful event. We have vendors coming. We have children's activities. We have a bounce house. It's going to be awesome. So I hope that you're able to come. A couple awesome upcoming events. Good to see you, Bobby. Thanks for joining us. The biggest news, I guess, and it didn't make our announcement sheet, but it will be coming to you soon, is that November 3rd, we will be moving to one service as a church in person. So we'll have a 10 o'clock service that will include the organ. We'll continue with the blended service, but we'll include a hymn as well. We'll continue to have the choir, and I know some are so excited that the organ will be back. And so we're doing this for several reasons. The first is for healing, as I have been blessed to meet so many of you through the pastor's meet and greets, just through conversations. I've just been aware of our need for healing. The merge of the two churches has been a lot. Also, the leaving of the founding pastor of the gathering has been a lot. And so we just find ourselves in a season of healing, of what we need. But also community. I have heard you all talk about how you desire to have community with one another. And so that's another way for us to have, when we have one service, we're aware of who's not there so that we can reach out. And then we're also going to be moving to small groups. We already have two small groups that have been meeting for decades. One just celebrated 70 years, but we're going to be creating other small groups as well. Of course, you're welcome to join our established Sunday school classes, but we're going to have some new adult small groups as well. So that will be around 9:15, depending on what time they decide to start. So that's the big reasons for us going to one service. Now we have a plan. Our plan is to grow. Our service will begin in the fellowship hall, and then when the sanctuary is ready, we're going to go fill that sanctuary. And as soon as we get to capacity, we're going to have an early morning service again. That will not conflict with our discipleship time, those small groups. So excuse me, that is what is coming your way. All right, we are going to continuing to look at the Enneagram. So we have been looking at the Enneagram to help us better understand ourselves. We are blessed as Christians to have every part of these 9 aspects in each one of us. But some of us have more of certain ones. So some of us identify with certain aspects of the Enneagram more than others. And so we've been looking at several. So we already have looked at number 1. They're the perfectionists. They're the ones who have the need to fix everything. They want the world to be better, and they've worked so hard to do that, and we need them. Number 2s are the helpers. They are the ones who they are motivated by their need to help others. But sometimes they are the hardest to ask for help. So we pray for them as they allow others to help them. And then we looked at the 3s, and they are the achievers. They have the need to succeed. They are the ones you do not want to play board games with because they have to win. But they are the ones who set goals and achieve them, and we need them so much. And then today we are looking at the 4s. So the 4s have the need to be special, as Richard Rohr writes in his book, The Christian Perspective. So kind of here is my summary of his. They have the need to be special. They awaken a sense of beauty and harmony in their surroundings. They are highly sensitive and artistically gifted. Everything with vital energy attracts them, and they grasp the moods and feelings of other people. They tend to be the most ecumenically oriented, and they reject the division of the world into sacred and profane. So I was talking to someone in our church who is an Enneagram 4, and we were talking, and I just brought up, I was like, one thing about 4s is they really reject this idea of sacred and profane. And this person's like, oh, absolutely. In fact, this person does not like when we talk about spiritual disciplines, because this person feels like everything should be a spiritual discipline because we're spiritual beings. And even Christian music. All music should be Christian if we're Christian. And so just this idea that some things are in a box that means Christian or spiritual and some things aren't. Number 4s on the Enneagram really reject this. This does not fit in with their idea of the world because the whole world is sacred. And they are more at home in the realm of symbols and dreams than in the real world. Now, from The Road Back to You, this book, they call number 4s the romantics. So they struggle with learning to accept themselves as they are. They seek their identity by exaggerating their uniqueness. So they like that they're unique, but then it's also a source of discomfort for them because then they feel like they don't actually fit in. So while they pride themselves at times of being unique, it also can be a source of discontent. And they have a considerable emotional range, and they're deeply creative. Number 4s are usually our highly creative people. So I wanted to read for you what it's like to be a 4. In fact, when I read this in worship, several people started laughing as they realized that people that they love definitely fit this number. So see if this sounds like someone you love. I like things that are unconventional, dramatic, and refined. I'm definitely not a fan of the ordinary. I never really felt like I belonged. I have so many feelings in a day, it's hard to know which ones to pay attention to first. Some people think I'm aloof, but I'm really just unique. In social situations, I tend to hang back and wait for others to approach me. Melancholy is comfortable for me, so it's annoying when people try to cheer me up. I'm not like everyone else, kind of like maybe a little bit like Eeyore at times. I'm highly sensitive to criticism, and it takes me a while to get over it. I spend a lot of time trying to explain myself. When people tell me what to do, I'm often tempted to do the opposite, which to me sounds like every teenager I've ever met. Sometimes I just disappear and go radio silent for a few days. I'm okay with sad songs, sad stories, and sad movies. Overly happy people give me a headache. I feel there is something essential lacking in me. It's really hard for me to settle into a relationship because I'm always looking for the ideal soulmate. I'm self-conscious. It's hard for me to find my place in a room full of people. People say I'm too intense, and my feelings overwhelm them. I'm either an artist or highly creative. I come up with one amazing creative idea after another. It's executing them that's hard. Lots of people misunderstand me, and it frustrates me. I pull people in, but then I get nervous and push them away, and I worry a lot about abandonment. Now, one of the writers of this book, Ian, is a 4 on the Enneagram, so there was something in particular that just jumped out at me in this chapter that I wanted to read because it sounded like it might resonate with those of you who feel like you're a 4 on the Enneagram. So he tells the story when I was 12, a bicycle repairman told me that my wobbly front tire was out of true, an expression I'd never heard before, but immediately recognized as describing not just the bike, but myself. Out of true. That's how a 4 feels. They feel like something is kind of missing. So people who are Enneagram 4s wrestle with dissatisfaction. They often want the unavailable, and their feelings are the basis of their identity. Remember, they're part of the heart group, so they make decisions based on their heart. Now, we've been talking about the wings as well. So the wings are the numbers on either side. So for a 4, it would be a 3 or a 5. So 4s with a 3 wing, they want to be the most unique and the best. Their energy is competitive, and they are often more outgoing, productive, and they turn dreams and ideas into reality. And then 4s with a 5 wing, they're more introverted and unconventional. They're very concerned with their uniqueness, but have less of a need to be noticed by an audience. And we've also been talking about the stress and the health security numbers. So the stress is the numbers when you haven't invited the Holy Spirit in, when you're tired and cranky and things aren't going well in life. You tend to revert back down the Enneagram. And so 4s, when they're not healthy, tend to look like unhealthy 2s. So they repress their own needs and they become excessively dependent on others. They begin to crave attention and they need assurance from others, and jealousy may surface. But then insecurity, when 4s have invited the Holy Spirit in, when they're feeling good, they begin to look like healthy 1s. So they become disciplined enough to buckle down and realize and follow through with their ideas. They're aware of what's happening in the present, and they're more calm and centered. Now, the deadly sin for Enneagram 4s is envy. They can instantly spot a person who has a more interesting life, a happier family, better artistic talent, and more original ideas. So because they are unique, they can instantly spot when someone else is unique or has something better than they do. Now, this is my personal advice, is for those who are on the Enneagram 4, social media can be a really hard place. Even though I'm not a strong 4 in the Enneagram, I struggle at times with social media and envy. And so on social media, we are really good at posting the best part of our lives and really bad about posting the really true stuff. And I get that. I'm right there with you. I don't like posting the bad stuff either. But it tends to paint this picture of our life that isn't true. And then for those of us who struggle with envy, it's easy for us to fall into the trap that everyone else has a better life. So what I do is I limit my time on social media. So I encourage other fours who wrestle with envy to also be careful about how much time we spend on social media and how it affects us too. So the biblical character. So we have several members in our congregation who are Enneagram 4s, and I wasn't totally in love with the biblical characters. I mean, I do love these ones. I'm sorry, not saying that. But I wasn't sure that they were the best examples. So I asked both of them, well, what character do you most identify with? And it was probably the worst question that I could ask someone who's an Enneagram 4 because they value uniqueness. So to find someone else who's just like them feels really hard. And in fact, one of them after the service commented, I wore the shirt for the service and commented on how this is a very Picasso-like shirt. And Picasso, I'm sure, was an Enneagram 4 because they tend to be the really creative ones. And so Picasso is the one who really made famous, even though it's my shirt's green, the black and white striped shirt that we kind of attribute to artists. So I didn't even plan that. Holy Spirit planned that. So the biblical character that we're going to look at is Joseph from the Old Testament, one of Jacob's favorite sons. So starting in chapter 37, Joseph, being 17 years old, was shepherding a flock with his brothers. And Joseph brought back a bad report of them, the brothers, to their father. Now Israel, also known as Jacob, loved Joseph more than any other of his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a long robe with sleeves, or multicolored, depending on how you translate and depending on how much you love Andrew Lloyd Webber, like I do. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. So once Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream that I dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. Suddenly my sheaf rose and stood above, when your sheaves gathered round and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to have dominion over us?" So they hated him even more because of his dreams and his words. He then had another dream and told it to his brothers. He didn't learn the first time, apparently. Again, these brothers were always jealous of Joseph. Didn't quite have that gift of discernment at 17, but he had another dream and again told it to his brothers, saying, "Look, I've had another dream. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What kind of dream is this that you have had? Shall we indeed come, I and your mother and your brothers, and bow to the ground before you?" So his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. And so, to paraphrase some of the rest of the story, so we see that Joseph is a dreamer. And so many who are Enneagram 4s are very artistic, but they also have unique gifts and talents. And so one of Joseph's unique gifts and talents was from God, the ability to have these dreams and interpret these dreams. But he's also unique. He is the one who has the beautiful coat of many colors, or the coat with long sleeves. To paraphrase some of the rest of the story, Joseph is sold by his brothers into slavery. They first planned to kill him. They were so upset. But there happened to be some Midianite traders walking by on their way to Egypt. So they sold their brother to some Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. Then they told their father, Jacob, or Israel, that Joseph had died. And so lied to him. So he thought his favorite son, one of his favorite sons, had died. So Joseph was sold into slavery in Egypt and was sold to Potiphar, who happened to be an official of the Pharaoh. Now Potiphar's wife, and he did a wonderful job. He was gifted, God was with him, and he worked hard. And so Potiphar's wife, though, saw Joseph and decided that she wanted to do inappropriate things to Joseph. Now Joseph, being a righteous man, did not give in to those inappropriate things, but she was so hurt by his rejection that she still claimed that it had happened. And so Joseph was thrown into prison. So while he was there, the chief cupbearer of the king and the chief baker offended the Pharaoh. And so they too were thrown into prison, and they had these crazy dreams. And so Joseph said, well, let me try. Let me see if I can interpret them. And so interpreted the dreams, both of which came true. And so the chief cupbearer was the one who was restored to the Pharaoh. And so Joseph said, "Please remember me," but the cupbearer forgot him. Now, a couple years later, the Pharaoh started having these weird dreams and they called everyone to see if they could interpret these dreams, and none of them did it in a way that the Pharaoh felt like was true. So finally, the cupbearer remembered, wait, there was this prisoner, Joseph, who was able to interpret my dream and the chief baker's dream, and in fact, both of them came true. Maybe he could interpret your dream. So Pharaoh had Joseph brought out of prison, and he interpreted the dreams, and come to find out that they were going to have 7 years of bountiful harvest, followed by 7 years of severe famine. And so because of Joseph interpreting the Pharaoh's dreams, they were able to store up during those 7 wonderful years of bountiful harvest so they could survive the 7 years of famine. Now the famine didn't just hit Egypt, it hit the whole area. So Jacob and his sons were not aware that they needed to be storing up. So that when the 7 years of famine hit, they found themselves without food. So they had heard that there was food in Egypt, so Jacob sent his sons, 10 of his sons. Benjamin, his youngest, his other favorite son, he kept behind, just in case it didn't go well. And so the 10 brothers come before Joseph, not knowing that it's Joseph, and ask for food. And so Joseph immediately recognizes his brothers. And in fact, he begins to wail, we're told. So we see these large emotional ranges that we often see with 4s. And you can imagine, right? His brothers were going to kill him first, and then they sold him into slavery. So understandably, Joseph is really upset. But he does come to a place of forgiveness, and there's beautiful reconciliation. And I'm going to change up the second story. So before I told the story of Moses and how Moses was envious of his brother Aaron and how eloquent in speech he was, but really I think Moses was just trying to get out of doing what God wanted him to do and rescuing the Israelites from slavery in the hands of the Egyptians. But another wonderful story came to mind, and that's King David. So King David, we are told, had his heart after God, and so he was one of God's chosen kings, but he was also imperfect. So he wrote so many of our psalms, and so when we think of our artists and those who are so creative, we think of King David. He also danced before the Lord, something creative and something expressive to God. But he was also very jealous. We know the horrible story of Bathsheba. He saw a woman bathing and decided that he needed to have her, and so went and took her, and then did horrible things to her husband when it was found that she was pregnant with his child. And so envy we see definitely in King David, someone who had to have someone else's wife, and took it even though it was not right and not what God wanted. So we see that David is artistic and also has a wide emotional range, but also made mistakes, as we do as well. So I continued and asking questions to someone in our congregation who is an Enneagram 4. So my first question was, Enneagrams 4 often need to hear there's nothing missing, that God created you as a full person. They really wrestle with this idea that God left something out. So how have you lived into this assurance? And this person responded by saying, I live into this assurance by being with close friends. Not with a lot of people, but with my few close friends. I am honest and open with my friends early on about how I can be moody and how my personality reveals itself. So this person is very aware, very self-aware, and just lets friends know. The second question, Enneagram 4s are romantics and have a need to be unique and different. How has this played out in your life? For this person, mostly in my head, I fantasize and think a lot about my uniqueness more than I incarnate it. Uniqueness can be scary, and I tend to be safe, but I fantasize about it. Intellectually, I enjoy taking the opposite point of view, even if I don't agree. I also enjoy saying things in my writings or out loud that hasn't been said before. The third question, envy is a deadly sin for Enneagrams 4. Envy for the normalcy, happiness, and comfort of others. How have you wrestled with envy? And the response, at times I've poorly wrestled with envy, at other times done better. Professionally, I sometimes borrow from others. I admire others and see if I can do something similar. I use the envy to make myself more creative. I have struggled at times with not being the socialized norm. Then my final question. Enneagram 4s draw vital energy from others and often ask, what do you think of me? Did you notice me? Did I catch your eye? How does this resonate with you? And this person's response: I do it all the time. I try not to. If I think I've done something good, unique, or different, and I haven't heard that, sooner or later I will ask someone, how was it? I prefer negative feedback to no feedback at all. They need to be seen as unique. And so so grateful for our Enneagram 4s. They are our creative ones, and they remind us that our God is a creator who is also a unique God, different from all the other gods out in the world, and is the supreme God. The Old Testament is full of people who worshiped other gods, and God was constantly reminding the people of Israel, I am your God. I am the only God. And so we are reminded that our God is the wonderful creator. And so we seek to be creative and also to be good stewards of God's creation. So thank you all for joining me. Great to have you. Join us, Mary, Summer, and Kendra, too, and hope all of you are having a good night. I love this fall weather, so hope you all get to enjoy the fall. All right, come join us for our fall festival this Saturday. All right, bye.